From small-town Iowa to the chilling depths of psychological thrillers, get ready for plot twists and edges of your seat stories. Our guest today had an early start to his writing journey. His first publication was in first grade when a hard-hitting essay on Airplane 2, the sequel, made it into the Lake Mills Elementary School's creative Courier. As a proud graduate of the University of Iowa, he spent nearly a decade doing media relations for the Hawkeye Athletic Department, where he got to witness the thrill of sports up close and maybe develop a few thriller plots. We'll ask him about that later. Our guest has also worn a few different professional hats, including sports writer, movie ticket taker, and even Dairy Queen ice cream slinger, which I think automatically makes you a hero to your children. His debut novel, A Necessary Act, was named Reader's Choice Novel of the Year by Underground Book Reviews. His latest book, Just Stay Away, hit the shelves in 2023 and incidentally has been living rent-free in my brain for the last 2 weeks. And his upcoming thriller, Pike Island, which promises to be just as beautifully creepy, is set to release in November 2024. We can't wait to dive into the ins and outs of these thrilling stories. And so without further ado, we say, Tony Wirt, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
It should be fun. Is there anything you'd like to add to the bio?
I can still do the little curly Q on the top of a soft serve cone.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, that's it. That muscle memory never goes away.
Oh, wow.
You were talking about my time at Iowa. We were on a trip with the field hockey team, and we stopped at like a Bonanza buffet place in the middle of Michigan on a bus trip because you got to feed 1 million people. You go to a buffet.
Yep.
And they had a soft serve machine there, and after we ate, I went and I like did my cone. I just went whoop, and I put the thing on it, and one of the players saw and goes, "You did the Dairy Queen thing." I go, "Yeah, I used to work there." She's like, "Do it for me." It's like, all right. So I did one, and next thing I know, the entire team is lined up, and I had to do cones for every player on the team.
Yeah.
So when did you know? Obviously, in first grade, you wrote your first movie critic, but when did you know that you wanted to be like a published author, that this is what you wanted as a career?
Well, it's funny because it was never something I thought about realistically. When I was a kid, I read all the time. I'm one of those Gen X kids that was reading Stephen King way too early, and it probably affected me a lot more than I'd like to admit. But I read all the time. I would read during class. Like I was the kid that had a book with me when my assignment was done. I was out reading. And I always did that, but I never, and I even dabbled with my own storytelling when I was a kid. I wrote a lot of just really dumb, I found a few downstairs, like in a box my mom had brought to our house one time. They weren't good, but that's fine. But it was honestly nothing I ever really thought about. So I ended up going into journalism when I went to school, and then I got a job doing PR for the Hawks. And I read, like I said, well, I mentioned those road trips. There's a lot of bus time when you're a sports info director. A lot of trips to Michigan State, Michigan, Purdue. Every now and then we'd even have to bus all the way to Ohio State. That's a really long one. But this was pre-Kindle, so I would always have the book I was reading, and I'd have to bring another one because on an 8-hour bus ride, you're gonna break through a few of them. And on one of those trips, I remember thinking like the book I was reading, it was good, but I was like, what if I wanted it to go away, it didn't. And then I was like, well, what if you tried? And I was like, you got time, you're sitting on this bus. So I busted out my laptop and I just kind of started writing this thing, and it was terrible. It never saw the light, but it was one of those where that's when it was like, I could do this potentially. But even then, it still wasn't but I've got a job. And then I ended up meeting my wife, or my future wife. We got married. She's a surgeon. She was a resident at the time. So I always knew my time in sports formation was going to be done. Once she was done with her residency, she would get a job somewhere.
Right.
and I would go with because surgery pays more than sports formation. You don't get as many free t-shirts, but the money's better.
Yes.
So I always knew that that career would come to an end. And we just had a baby. And I thought to myself, she got a fellowship opportunity in Omaha. And we were going to live there for 1 year. And I thought, wait a minute, instead of getting like a job at Best Buy or, whatever I could get for a year,
Right.
why don't I stay home with the kid? And if I do that, I could try writing a book.
Nice.
Because I did not know how babies worked.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great idea. I was like, the kid will just like sit in her crib and I'll be able to bang out this book. I'll probably have it done by the end of the year. So as you can guess, that did not happen in any way. Like I didn't even attempt, but it was in the back of my mind. So a couple of years later, she got a little bit older, and it was a little more, you didn't have to stare at her constantly to keep her from dying. I started kind of writing this little story nugget idea I had like during naps. And I got about, halfway through it, and then we got pregnant again. And and this time I knew it was coming. So I said, I need to finish this before the baby comes, because once the baby comes, we're done for a while.
Right.
So I banged out this first draft of what ended up being a necessary act. And it was, beyond terrible, as most first drafts are, but at least it was there.
Yeah.
Then our second daughter was born, put it away. A couple years later, once the older one was in preschool, and the younger one was, year and a half, 2, whatever she was, I found a college kid that would come and watch her one afternoon or one morning a week, Wednesday mornings, while the older one was at preschool, and I could go to a coffee shop and write.
Nice.
So I had 2 hours a week.
Oh my gosh.
For a year. That's how I wrote. And I started rewriting some things and redoing some things. And then eventually, kids get older. Suddenly they're both in preschool. Now I've got 2 days a week and I don't even have to pay somebody.
Well, you do, but
hit kindergarten, it was 5 mornings. Like I got 5 mornings a week. Holy crap. And that's when things picked up steam, and I actually finished my first book and
nice.
Started the whole thing. And it was just, if it wasn't for my wife, obviously this would have never happened. I am extremely privileged to be married to someone who is just in essence a safety net. I could do this, and like the thing from the beginning was I knew that I could be literally the worst writer in the world and never sell a copy of a single thing I wrote, and my kids were going to have dinner and go to college.
Isn't that nice? Yeah, that's perfect.
And that cannot be overstated enough. It's the reason I can do this. And I have a lot of writing friends who they've got jobs. They're writing during breaks. They're writing, late at night because that's the only time they have.
Yeah.
And so I definitely understand how lucky I've been. And it's the main reason I can say I'm here where I am now.
Yeah, it's so nice to have a supportive spouse.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely it is. But then I read that when you finished An Unnecessary Act, you kind of debated whether you were going to go traditional or if you were going to be self-publishing for a little while. You weren't certain?
Well, there wasn't much of a debate. I tried to get an agent with Unnecessary. I queried that thing for a year. I probably racked up 75 rejections. My request rate was great. I had so many agents wanting to read the full thing.
Right.
And every one of them was like, oh, we really liked it, but, and
did they ever say why? What was?
I did. It's not real common to get, especially nowadays, to get, a lot of constructive feedback, but I did get from some of them that were like, I really like this. I do think you could work on this, or, a few random, like, tension and pacing, that kind of thing. But, so it was, there were some that actually corresponded with me a little bit back and forth of like, I would recommend doing this, or or when you try your next one, think of these kind of pacing things and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But like a lot of it, you don't get a lot. It's such a subjective business that there isn't a lot. I mean, you can look at reviews for my books. Somebody will give me a 5-star because they loved this character, and the next one gives me a 1-star because they hated this character.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
just,
It is such a, yeah.
yeah, it's hard to gain any, and especially when you're dealing
Mhm.
with agents and editors that are overwhelmed with, like, they can't take the time to, and also a lot of times they don't know.
Mhm.
They can read it and just be like, it's like when you pick up a book,
Yeah.
you can tell, like, I love this book. This, like, after 2 chapters, I'm sucked in. I want to keep going. And sometimes it's like, it's okay. Let's see if it picks up. But they're not going to keep waiting for it to pick up. So it's a subjective thing, and you just have to kind of figure it out on your own, really.
Mhm.
But yeah, I tried with the Necessary Act. I feel like I got close a lot of places, but just didn't quite get there.
Mhm.
And then I debated if I wanted to shelve it completely and
Mhm.
write something else and keep trying, or if I wanted to self-publish it. And at the time, it was just like, I didn't want the last 2 years to be in vain, basically. I'd worked on it, so actually, well, technically from when I started, it was 6 or 7 years,
Right.
like I told you, that long process. But I wanted something out of it because I figured there's no guarantees anyway.
Yep.
So I self-published that. I did it the quote unquote right way. I hired an editor. I got a cover designer, did all that stuff. From my old job, I was able to format it myself because
Yeah.
I used to do the media guides at Iowa, so I knew how to desktop publish, that kind of stuff. So that was nice. And ended up self-publishing. It did well for a self-published book, so that was nice. That
Very
gave
good.
me
Yeah.
some confidence that, like, maybe it's all right.
Mhm.
And when I wrote my next book, I actually debated just self-publishing it again because, like, that went pretty well. I could easily do that again, but I didn't want to. I still wanted I kind of wanted the traditional route.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, the fact that I know what I'm doing self-publishing, if I query again for a year and it doesn't go, I can just do that then too. There's no
That's
rush.
Very
So
true.
that's what I did. And actually, that book was Pike Island.
Oh, wow.
No.
It was the one I actually signed with my agent on.
Okay.
And then we went on sub and it didn't sell. It was the same as querying. A lot of, oh, we really liked it,
But
Yeah.
So when that didn't sell, I ended up writing Just Stay Away.
Right.
And then we subbed that one. That one sold. And then our editor at Thomas & Mercer was like, well, what else? What's next? What else does he have? And she's like, well, we have this one. She's like, oh, that's great. And here's the funny part. She was one of the editors that passed on it the first time.
Oh my gosh.
And we've got a good relationship. I asked her about it last year when we were at VoucherCon having a drink at the Thomas & Mercer party. I asked her about it, and she's like, yeah, I do not remember reading that book at all. It all worked out. I'm not mad. Nobody's upset. It all worked out. I tell that story a lot to authors and querying authors and authors on sub and stuff because it is just a perfect example of it is all timing. I mean, you got to have the goods.
Yes.
You can have a fantastic book that just keeps hitting, keeps stepping on a rake. You submit it at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Like you said, the agent or the editor was in a different mood.
Yes.
Or they had just watched a movie that they didn't like that had a similar character to what you have, and that just
Yep.
Release schedule has a big thing to do with it. If you have a book that's about firemen and they're like, well, we just released a fireman book, we're not going to release 2 fireman books in the fall of 24. It stinks, but that's how the business works. It's just
so true.
Yeah.
So true.
Interesting.
So now, what is your writing process? Like, do you write? Because now you obviously have your children are grown a little bit, so you have more time. So are you a guy that sits down from like 8 to 4, or do you like write mornings and do something? Like, how does it all work?
I do mornings.
Okay.
I tend to, well, and if you read Just Stay Away, you'll know that you can probably tell I have a problem writing in my own house. I usually write in a coffee shop just
Okay.
because it gets me out of this. If I'm sitting at the desk here, there's like, when you stop for 20 seconds to think, you'd be like, oh, I could throw that load of laundry in.
Mm-hmm.
I'll think while I do that. But
Right.
once you get up from the desk, it's done. I mean, there's just too much. So I remove myself. And that way I'm like, if it's 9 o'clock and I'm like, ooh, I'm kind of stuck here. Like, well, you're here till noon. So figure it out. There's nothing else for you to do except
I
write.
love it. That's nice.
Great. That's a good idea too.
So yeah, Just Stay Away I wrote during COVID when I was stuck at home. So,
that so works.
Yeah. You know what they say? A man will write an entire novel instead of going to therapy.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I remember looking back through some drafts after we'd sold it and we were in the editing process. Damn, I was going through some stuff, wasn't I?
Craig certainly was. Yeah.
I will say it's all fiction. My whole thought process for that book was, I did say I was like, what if it was me, but I made the wrong decision at every turn, And there was a psychotic child in the neighborhood. I had to add that.
That was creepy.
Neighborhood I know of.
But the creepiness of it, I think,
Right.
was we just like Angie and I just finished reading this book. So the creepiness of it for me was it was so believable. And it was so like small step by small step and incremental. And it was like, this could happen. This could happen. Like we've all had a kid just show up with your one of your kids and like not really talk to adults. Like that's happened to me, so you don't really think about it much. And then he does the next thing and you're like, ooh, but you don't really think like, I mean, everything that you wrote, it was like, oh, this could happen. Oh, this could definitely happen. Oh my gosh, that was
we did have a kid show up from the woods in our backyard.
Oh my God.
Perfectly lovely child.
Yeah.
Played with my daughters, I want to stress this. The kid was fine. But no, that is where I got that idea. I was like my kids were, 7 and 5, I think at the time. And I was in the kitchen. I looked out the back window and like, who's that kid? Like the kid just showed up. But that's what kids do. They show up, they play. And then like the kid would every day that summer, because he lived, in Just That Way, I basically used my house as the setting, which is why my wife cannot read that book. She got 2 chapters in and said, nope, this is too real. Yeah. Which I get because, like I said, it was COVID. I was stuck in the house. Write what you know. This was my place. So the house is based on our house and our yard and everything. We do have that woods in the back. And yeah, this kid just showed up. Like, every day he would come down this little path from the houses above, and he was a perfectly fine child. He played with my kids. No biggie. But that is where I got that idea.
Yeah.
It was very creepy for that. And the other thing that you hit the nail right on the head was like everything writer related, from having saved your the manuscript on your computer and on a disc as well, because that something might happen, to like all the times you're either saying like, oh my God, this is trash, or this is so good, or like, I mean, everything in there, you could tell that you're right in tune with what a writer would go through.
Losing track of time and then realizing things are going on around you that you may have forgotten.
Yeah.
Like a kid.
Totally. Like it was so good. So good. And I don't want to do any spoilers, but that kid is freaky. Honestly, I had a great time reading that book.
It was a lot of fun.
It's still living in my brain, but it's okay.
that was a fun one to edit, to rewrite. I always like I don't like drafting. I never have. Drafting is hard for me, but I really like rewriting and editing. I feel like I'm a designer. I'm not a contractor.
I love that. Love that.
I want to walk in when the house is built and make it cool. The building of the house is tough. And that's what drafting is. I look at, you're just building, that's the frame, and then you get to, so it's always fun because, I had a creepy kid, But once it's there, you can come in and be like, okay, now what can I do to really amp it up?
Totally.
And you get cool idea. You can think on a more micro level as opposed to the macro level, and really do some fun stuff. And that was fun. I feel like I dialed Levi up, 3-4 notches in the editing process, and that was a lot of fun.
It was fun.
I've always loved the creepy kid thing. I read Baby Teeth by Zoya Stage, and when I read that, my youngest daughter was the same age as Hannah was.
Oh,
It messed me up.
yeah, no.
Oh my gosh.
It
Yeah.
really messed me up.
Well, I think the part, and I don't want to give any spoilers, but just the reaction from the people around him as he's telling them what's going on, and I could feel it, and just that, and being a stay-at-home dad and having to be worried about how people would, judge him and, see him, and I just felt so bad for him because, he's trying to explain and nobody's listening, and it's so realistic in that way.
Is.
Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I was a stay-at-home dad. I've been a stay-at-home dad since my kids were born, basically. And I know the feeling, it can be isolating because you're a guy.
Yeah.
And it's just different. You're in a space that's not used to you. Don't make it sound like I'm saying like, pity the poor stay-at-home dad. Like, we're fine.
Right.
But it is hard because my
males
husband
are doing okay. We don't need to, but
yeah.
But there is
My husband was a stay-home dad too, so that's why it was like, reading the book, it helped me kind of see, because he would tell me what would happen, but just kind of seeing it through your eyes was a little bit eye-opening as well.
But it's true, and I feel like the decision sometimes that Craig takes to not tell his wife what's going on.
Yeah,
like I was a stay-at-home mom, and there were decisions that I made not to there's some tidbits that's like it's not even worth it, but then that's what he's thinking, and look what happens.
Right.
So
yeah, it was like I said, the big thing was I tried to think of like, what's the worst way to handle things, and I just take the wrong turn at every juncture, and I think he did.
Absolutely,
you did great with that one.
Absolutely. So me and Angie love to know this because she's a pantser and I'm a plotter. So we love to ask the question, are you a pantser or a plotter or a plantser? I'm
kind of a plantser. I'm not organized enough to be a plotter, and I'm not creative enough to be a pantser. So I'm just kind of in this like ugly middle area where I've got a notebook full of like random ideas I have.
Yeah.
And like they're kind of plot points, but they're not in any order.
Oh wow.
So as I'm I'll be going along and be like, I need something here. And then I'll look in the notebook and I'll be like, what if bicycle car chase? And then I'll be like, that's kind of cool. So what if, and then I'll go and I'll throw that in there. Or like I'll have ideas of like milestones I want these characters to hit. Like this is going to be a thing. This is going to be the mid-act thing. This is, and so I kind of work my way to that. I've described it before as when you're lost in the woods, you talk about see something ahead of you and see something behind you. And you walk to the thing ahead of you, then you pick another thing ahead of you. And that's kind of the way I write, is like I start off and I'm like, okay, the inciting incident is going to be this. So I'm working my way to that. And once I hit there, I'll kind of look and be like, well, I had this idea, that will be next. And that's my next point. And I just kind of keep leapfrogging my way. And then eventually I've got enough words I can quit.
So you have, because it's like a psychological thriller, and do you know the clues as you're writing, or do you go back and insert them in later on during the editing process?
I like to think I have them while I'm writing. I always go back and at the very least enhance them as when I'm done. Like I have, and I think that that's hard of writing this genre a little bit, is remembering that you can do that.
Right.
I have to remember that like I said, if I'm more of a designer than a contractor, sometimes I find myself designing while I'm trying to build. And I have to think, no, just build a house. Just build the house, come back and make it pretty later.
Right.
And that's what I'm doing. Like in the thing I'm working on now, I have to keep reminding myself of, no, just get it done. Just get the only attribute that matters in a draft is doneness.
Right.
Yep.
Your
Agreed.
first draft is either done or it's not. It's not good. It's not bad. It's done or it's not. When it's
So
done,
true.
then you go back and you can go back and make it good.
So
And
when
it's
you're
fun
like,
because, like I said, I think I'm a good rewriter.
Yep.
mhm.
And I'll be sitting there like agonizing over my screen. I'll have to be like, you're good at you can fix it later.
Right.
That's your strength. Lean into it, man.
So just curious, like when you're writing, when you get to that point where you're like designing, do you get stuck if you can't figure out where something is supposed to happen? Like, or can you just keep kind of bounce around and keep going? Like, okay, I don't know what it is now. I can just come back and fix it later, or do you get stuck?
I write pretty linear, so I can get stuck. And when I do, a few times I have, and I know a lot of people that will write out of order. Like, I'll just go write the ending now. I know what that's going to be, or I'm going to write this. I will sometimes. I've tried that, but it kind of messes with me a little bit. Usually, what I'll do is just plow forward and just be like, okay. I'll literally tell myself, you're going to write a terrible scene. You are going to write a terrible bridge scene. You know where you want to go. You are going to write something that if you read, you would mock this person. Tell them to quit writing forever. You know, I think back into, I call it journalism mode. Like I said, I used to do media relations, and on all those bus trips, game ends.
Yeah, you need to
leave in about a half hour.
Yeah.
So you got to get your story written. You got to get it posted to the web. You got to get interviews done. You got to get all that. And there was no time for writer's block. You sat down and you wrote as absolute fact, because that bus would not wait for you.
Yeah. I love that, because I think that a lot of us do that. Like, if it's not perfect, you just don't want to write it, but you can't fix something that's not written. So
Exactly.
just write something down. It's easier said than done, mind you, but yeah, just
Right.
write something down.
I give this speech to so many writers. Like when we're talking about, like, just write, it's fine. And when I sit at the keyboard, I will just be paralyzed. And I have to be like, I need to like tape record myself talking to when I'm pep talking to another writer or something.
Yeah,
just,
it's
like,
true. That would be good. That would be annoying too, because it's like, I said that, darn it, like, right. So do you know the ending then? Because you write linear from spot to spot to spot, but do you usually know where your final step is?
I know where I'm going for the most part.
Okay.
Not completely, but I know where I know how I want it. I know where I want to go.
Okay.
And for the most part, it goes there. It changes every now and then. The thing I'm working on now, I'm still working. This one I don't know.
Wow. See, for me as a plotter, that totally, like, that's fascinating. Like, I don't even know you and Angie. Like, I mean, how you just not know what the ending is incredible to me. Like, congrats for both of you.
I don't know if that's a good thing, because we never got there yet. And I got a deadline coming up and I'm starting to get nervous.
Oh no.
One of the reasons that I'm asking you this is because, without spoiling it, the very last scene of Just Stay Away, did you know that's what you were going to write when you were writing the book?
No. Well, I think I know what you're talking about.
When the neighbor comes over. Yeah.
That was actually a fairly late edition.
Really? Because that's so creepy.
Yeah. I did not have that in there. And that was again where in the seasoning stage, you're like, where can I add some spice? For my romance authors, not spice. I want to make that clear.
Creepiness. Yeah.
Creepiness. A kicker, shall we say. I don't want to disappoint anyone.
With the use of the word spice. Okay.
Yes. Right. No false advertising.
The other night I was just sitting with my husband and we hadn't shut the shades on the window, and I just looked at it, it was pitch dark, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I just gotta do one thing. And that was totally because of Just Stay Away. And I just shut those drapes out, and it's like, nobody's peeking into our house tonight. Sorry. Especially not like this little kid. You have totally rent free, right in my brain.
Yes.
So what's the one thing that you think that you did that pushed you through this career or got you where you're at right now?
Well, I mean, persistence for sure, being stubborn and just being like, this is what I want. I picked a goal and I wanted to get there, and I wasn't going to quit till I did. And as like I said before, and to be able to do that, to have a supportive partner to prop me up that way. Because again, if I was working a 9-to-5 job, I don't know. I mean, I probably would have quit by now.
So did you know that you wanted to write this type of book, like a thriller suspense, like a little bit on the horror side from the get-go? Do you ever think that you'll write something else?
This is what I've always liked to read. This is what I like to write. I'm like I said, I'm a little on the edge of bridging the gap between thriller and horror. One of the things I was talking about is I do have a book that's more straight horror. Definitely, much more on that side that I really like. And we're gonna look
into it.
We're gonna look and see what we can do with that.
Nice.
Either with that one was a lot of fun. So if I was to, if you call that branching out, I can branch more into, I'm going to stay in the thriller horror genre.
Okay.
Where I am on that spectrum, we'll see, but it's going to be, you're not going to see any like hard sci-fi out of me or anything. I'd like to read it, but
for sure. But
again, that's not my, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So your next release is Pike Island. Do you want to tell us like a little bit about that one, and like where do you think is the difference between Pike Island and Just Stay Away, and what can we expect from that one a bit?
Okay. So like I said, if my books are on the spectrum between thriller and horror, Just Stay Away was a little more on the horror side. Pike Island's closer to a traditional thriller. It is about a representative in Congress who basically gets a unsigned postcard one day from a place, and it's from a place that he vacationed as a kid. And they took a trip with their high school buddies, and I guess I'll say got into some shenanigans. So it's a dual timeline thriller. I mean, there's a little bit more of a mystery element to this one as well. It's told in alternating chapter timelines of the congressman's chief of staff. She's trying to figure out what this postcard about, what happened back then, and flashes back to the congressman as a teenager with his friends at the lake going through what they did. And it is based around a real place in Minnesota here. When I was a kid, my family had a cabin on Cedar Lake by Faribault, and there was, in the back half of the lake, there was this little island, completely wooded, that apparently had a unknown cabin, or house actually, right in the middle of it. Couldn't see it from the lake. Most people did not know it was there. And it was like if you walked out of your house right now and didn't come back for 30 years, that's what this place was. I remember seeing kids' shoes lined up in the closet. There were magazines like on one of the tables. And this is all like when I was in kindergarten, first grade. We took the pontoon boat across the lake, went back there, tied it up, and like hiked through the woods and found this. And we did it a couple times when I was really little. And it was just weird. And as a little kid, I just thought it was cool, but it was something I always remembered and thought, once I started writing, I was like, "Ooh, that would be a great setting." To the point where I literally had to call my parents home and be like, "Do you remember that island with the house? That was real, right?" And they're like, "Yeah, that was real." I was like, "Well, what was the deal? Whose house was that? What was the story?" "I don't know." Like, "You don't know? Like, nobody knows?" "I don't know." It's like, "So you took me and my cousins when we were 5, 6, 7, just across the lake to a random house that had stuff in it, but had obviously been abandoned for like 30 years. Like, because I remember there was like floors rotting in certain rooms you couldn't go in. You weren't supposed to go in that room because the floor was rotting." They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, great Gen X parenting there.
Yeah, at least they were with you. They didn't let you go alone. So,
They were
Drop you off on the island and keep going.
but yeah, so But that was only when we were a little kid. And I used to go up with my parents when I was in high school. I had a group of friends that they would let us go up there every now and then together. And I never even thought to do that. But that side of the story is they go out exploring and they find this house. And hilarity ensues from there.
We'll keep it there.
I really want to go back.
Just to see if it's still there.
So that lake is about an hour and a half from my house.
Yeah.
And my cousin has a boat on that lake still. And I legitimately, if I get time at the end of the summer, I really want to call him up and be like, let's go out there and I want to see what.
That would be great social media. Like,
yes,
I mean,
like promotional.
I'm seeing it on TikTok already.
I have also thought about if I do end up going back there, I want to like stop at there's a lodge on the lake where like they have like a little campground and like kind of where like the cabins that are all there will, they'll get beer, random grocery things and stuff like that. Right. But I always wonder, like, would the people, I would just go in there and be like, hey, you know that island? Do you know anything about it?
I tried be like interviewing people like all over the place and putting that on social media. I'm so glad I'm following you on social media because now I want to know if you get this done. This is so cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
I should do that because it's weird just that it's just there. And I tried Googling it and looking for any no, there's nothing. So
thank you so much for taking us through your writing process and your books and your characters and where you get them and the development. I love that. We love talking to authors and getting all the ins and outs of how their brains work. We are going to switch over now and do our top 10, or not top 10, but 10 speed round questions so that readers and listeners can actually get to know you, the other side of you, like the normal person, not writer side of you. So it's 10 questions, very simple. And you can answer them any way you like. Long answers, short answers. We're just looking to get to know you better. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
If you could instantly speak any language, which one would it be?
Probably Spanish, just because I figure that's the most useful. I mentioned earlier that I'm reading The House of Bone and Rain by Gabino Iglesias. There's a lot of Spanish in that book. It takes place in Puerto Rico. And I know just enough to be able to get the gist most of the time, but it would be nice to be able to just read it and be like, yes, I know exactly what they're saying right there.
Totally agree with you. Those are fun. Number 2, would you rather have a lifetime supply of your favorite food or your favorite beverage?
My favorite beverage.
Haha. And what would that be?
Well, I'm a big fan of nice beer, really good beer. And some of the stuff I really like can be really expensive. So if I had a lifetime supply of that, that would be great.
That would work out.
Barrel-aged stout collection in the basement would be fantastic.
Would be, actually. Yeah. Have you ever used traffic as an excuse for being late?
For sure. I mean, it's hard in I live in Rochester, Minnesota, not a huge town, not a ton of traffic. So sometimes it's hard, but also it almost is a better excuse because it's so rare. You can be like, yeah, I don't know what was going on 52. It was it was backed up. And then you get up there and there was nothing. And people be like, yeah, that happens, man. It's a rare enough thing that when it happens, it really ticks people off. Yeah. So they're ready to be like, yeah, traffic, man. Isn't that awful?
It's awful. We need to do something about that. Yeah.
Right.
If you could jump into any book, which one would it be?
Jump into? That's tough because all of my favorite books I would not want to jump into in any way.
You could be just one of those passing through characters. You don't have anything to happen to you. You could just be the witness.
That's too scary. I think of one of my favorite books of all time. The first thing that comes to mind, Baby Teeth by Zoya Stage. I love that book. Don't want to be in that book in any way, shape, or form. Oh, okay, here we go. Dave the Cat writes a novel. I want to jump into this book so I would know how to do all this stuff and be able to make my life much, much, much easier.
Yep.
So that's what I would do. I'm also a bit of a comedy nerd. So I recently read a book about the Kids in the Hall, the Canadian sketch troupe HBO show.
Yay, Canadian.
Again, watched that way too young, affected my life way too much. I would love to be in that and just like watch. I would like to be there for the tapings of those shows or those old early shows at the Riv.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'd be in.
Try to understand how their brains work. It's awesome. I love that.
Exactly.
What's your favorite thing about Minnesota?
Oh, we're having a moment right now.
Right?
Yeah. The whole state. I mean, I grew up in Iowa, but my family was always from Minnesota, so I always kind of felt half Minnesotan anyway.
Okay.
Like it's funny because like when I went to the University of Iowa, even like my coworkers, like I'm a Twins fan, was a Vikings fan, Timberwolves fan, Lynx fan. Like they joked that I was Minnesotan. And I grew up like my hometown is on the border. It's just right underneath in Iowa. And then we moved here about 12 years ago for good. It's a phenomenal state. I love the weather. Like August in Minnesota is the greatest place. If it was like this all year, everyone would live here.
Oh.
We just need the winters to weed people out.
So you can have your peace and quiet again.
It's great. You know, like I said, we've got, Governor Walz is like showing the world like why we've elected him and why he was my congressman before this.
He's amazing.
But, I was telling our girls like how we got to meet him at the state fair.
Love it.
Like 4 or 5 years ago, and that's who he is. He's amazing. He's a great dude. The state fair started yesterday.
Nice.
It's a great, it's the Minnesota State Fair. It's amazing. There's like you want to get ranch dressing on a stick, you can get it. They have Sweet Martha's cookies where you just get a bucket of cookies this big for like $10, and there you can get you can drink milk for $3. Just carry your cup around, come fill it up anytime.
Oh,
great! It's a great state, and it's really cool that it seems like the whole world is like, or at least the whole country is all of a sudden excited about Minnesota culture now.
Getting to know it, absolutely. And you can see the pride right in your face. So I love it. I love it, love it, love it. What would you like to spend less time doing?
Besides all the boring stuff like cleaning and stuff like that, but that's where I think of things. I hate to say it, I want to spend less time drafting the book I'm working on right now. I want to have that done so I can get to the fun part of like making it good.
Love it. Spoken like a true writer. Have you met one of your heroes? Have you ever met one of your heroes?
Sure. I've met a lot of my heroes in different realms. Like I said, I worked in Iowa in University of Iowa in the sports formation department. So I met a lot of got to know a lot of great people. Like everyone was on the Caitlin Clark train, still is. But Iowa coach Lisa Bluter, I introduced her to her first press conference. She is an amazing, amazing human being who I idolize to this day. Wow. And I got to work with her for 10 years. Current Iowa head coach who just, when Lisa retired, Jan Jensen, another absolutely amazing human being. So honored to be able to work with them and to see what that program has become over the last few years has just been awesome, So I've gotten to meet a lot of athletes, coaches, that kind of thing that I've really idolized. Writing wise, over the last few years, it's been a trip. I've gone from reading these books and idolizing these people to like now, like we hang out at conventions and stuff. Like I think Sean Cosby is one of the greatest writers I've ever read. And he helped celebrate the launch of Just Stay Away with Us at BoucherCon last year. It's amazing, I had Zoya Stage blurbed my blurb Just Stay Away, and I got to blurb Dear Hannah, her sequel to Baby Teeth, which was just mind-blowing to me. That's one of those things, if I told me 10 years ago, just so you know, this is going to happen, I'd have never believed it. Never, ever, ever.
I love it.
But yeah, there's been plenty of times over the last couple of years where I've just been like, is this my life now? Oh, it's amazing.
That's the best. That's the best. Number 8 is, would you rather speak to your past self or your future self?
Ooh, I'd rather speak to my future self, I think, just from a pure curiosity standpoint,
Yeah.
because I think of, like I just said, I think of the things I could tell my past self that would just blow their minds. Like, what could future me tell me that would blow?
Mm,
So I'd rather do that, I think. You're taking a chance when you talk to your future self.
Yeah.
so true.
Well, because you
Because,
can
I
change
mean,
the timeline.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, but also talk to your future self and you just get the look of, yeah, hey, have fun at BoucherCon next week.
No,
Do it while you're there, man.
enjoy it.
That would be horrible, but yeah, I
Yeah.
never thought of
So
that.
yeah. So I don't know. You are taking a pretty big chance by doing that.
Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to order a new menu item if you're going to one of your like go-to favorite restaurants?
Probably an 8 or a 9.
Oh,
It,
look at
it, it depends. It depends on how often I can get to that place.
Yeah.
If it's a restaurant that I'm gonna eat once every 5 years, and I know something is absolutely amazing, and it's one of my, I'm gonna get that.
Mhm.
If it's something I'm like, hey, we can be back in a few months, or whatever, then I'll experiment more, because like, you know what, that was good, wasn't great. Next time I'm going back to the bolognese, or whatever.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. And the last one, the last question, which is always so, analytical. I'm just kidding. It's just like a stupid question. But do you consider cereal a soup?
No, cereal's its own thing. You gotta cook it. Well,
Well, it's wheat in a liquid, so
no, it's its
no.
own thing.
Are you one of those guys that considers a hot dog not a sandwich?
Hot dog's its own thing too.
You're
That's what they call hot dog buns, not sandwich buns.
Yeah. Very true.
There you go. Thank you so much for answering those. We just love hearing the responses to all of these silly questions. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks.
So I just wanted to say, I know that you're currently working on a project that you're in contract on. Is that the only thing you're working on? Do you have other things that are lined up for us to be coming out soon?
That's the only thing I have that I'm working on right now, because I'm on deadline.
Mm.
And it was one of those things where I kind of, when we signed, I kind of plotted out this would be great. I've got plenty of time between now and then. I don't have to like go crazy. So then I wasted all that time to the point where now it's like, oh, now I gotta go crazy. It's the end of August. So yeah, I could have just been like, work a little bit every day and then just spread it out. No, we just did nothing for a long time, and now we got to go 900 miles an hour until we get to the end. Hopefully it'll turn out good.
Yeah, it'll be great.
Hopefully I won't be turning in a manuscript that says, you got any ideas for the end? Because
Oh no.
I'm willing to go with what you guys have.
It's nice that your agent is going to be able to read it before you send it too, because that.
Oh yeah, Abby's great. I struck gold with her. I could not imagine a better partner. She's very strong editorially. Just with very supportive, everything. Everyone I know loves her.
Yeah.
She's the first person I thank in every book, and will be forever.
Nice.
Definitely. So can you let people know where they can find you on social media?
Sure. I am on Threads and Instagram at Wirter, Wirter. It's especially because it almost looks like writer. It's probably too confusing. It was like my nickname in high school that I got long ago, and you'd think I would have professionalized my social media presence a little, but I didn't. I'm on Facebook, just under my name. I still have a Twitter account, but I've pretty much, like a lot of people, have abandoned that area. But yeah, mostly on Threads and Instagram at Wirter, Wirter.
Okay. Perfect.
And you have a website too, right?
And TonyWirt.com. Yes. I keep that updated with, links to buy books, read about books, bio stuff, that kind of stuff.
And can you let people know when your next book is coming out again? Because I know it's coming out in November.
Yes,
Was it
November 1st, Pike Island. We'll be hitting the stores and the online places and all that stuff.
So definitely Yeah, definitely pre-order that if you have, or if you're watching this before it comes out, and
Yes,
if it's
please.
already out, then go buy it.
That's right.
Yes.
And so, yeah, we're gonna just say thank you to Tony for joining us. And, you know, we were really happy to have you on. We really appreciate the fact that you came on to be with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh, it was a lot of fun. So yeah, everyone, just if you like these videos, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell, and we will join you again next time with a new amazing author. And it'll probably be somebody that Tony knows.
That's right. We like the lark group.
Yep.
A lot of good ones in there.
Yeah. And then, speaking of, and if you haven't watched Jason Powell's video, he was the one who introduced us to Tony. So definitely go back and find Jason's video as well. So
Yes, he's got a new cover for No Man's Ghost. He just released, you know, yesterday as we were recording this. He sent me 2 different files. I'm like, which song do I play for this one? And I'm like, oh, you got to go Jay-Z. You got to go Jay-Z every time.
Love it.
oh, it's so nice. He's such a nice person, and you are as well. And we're
Absolutely.
really grateful to
Had a
have you
great
both.
time.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
you.